up with this famous character. For John Henry was a mighty railroad man, born and raised in the South. Stories like Paul Bunyan and John Henry, the famous railroad worker, were not written down. They were told from person to person. Perhaps some started like this. Say, did you hear that John Henry could lay 2 miles of railroad track in one day? I just heard that John Henry could lay 20 miles of railroad track in one day. John Henry? Why, sure, I've heard about him. He's the fellow that could lay 50 miles of railroad track in only 1 hour. With each person adding a little more exaggeration, it's easy to see how stories about legendary heroes became known as tall tales. In time, many of the stories were written down. From the Southwest comes the story about Pecos Bill, the greatest cowboy who ever lived. It happened this way. When Pecos Bill's family was migrating to the Rio Grande, the 18 children were yelling so loud his mother didn't hear him cry out as he bounced out of the wagon. Pecos was adopted and raised by the granddaddy of the entire race of coyotes. When Pecos finally discovered he was a human being, he knew he had to start wearing clothes. So he found a big steer, grabbed it by the tail, and he yelled so loud it jumped clear out of its skin. Pecos became a cowpuncher, and with all his skills, he soon became boss of all the cowpunchers and the inventor of modern cowpunching. Pecos invented the rawhide lariat. One hot, dusty afternoon, he looked out and saw a huge black cloud moving across the sky. To save the ranch, he lassoed the cyclone, and when he pulled it down to earth, it turned into rain for his thirsty cattle. With his lariat, he could rope 1,000 cattle at one time, or 1,000 buffalo. Pecos was much admired by all the young ladies, but he never cared much for them until one day he saw a young lady named Sue riding down the river on a catfish as big as a whale. She begged Pecos to let her ride Lightning, Pecos's horse. But Lightning had other ideas and sent her off to the moon. If you look closely, you can still see her there to this day. Pecos was very unhappy and cried so hard his tears made the Salt River in Arizona. Some say that Pecos Bill is still alive today, just where he has always been, in the hearts of the cowboys. Though the heroes of the many tall tales are quite different, most of the stories about them are alike in some ways. Usually, tall tales take place in the early history of America. Each region had its own special heroes. Stormalong, who once wrestled a squid with 100 arms. He was from the East Coast. Davy Crockett, who rode his pet bear in the wilderness. He was famous throughout the Mississippi Valley. Sam Patch became famous by making daring jumps off waterfalls in the Great Lakes region. Tall tales vary according to the person who wrote them down. As you can see, the illustrator's idea of what the person looked like also varied. The fabulous feats of the heroes are usually related to an occupation. Pecos Bill, super cowboy. John Henry, super railroad worker. Paul Bunyan, super logger. These heroes helped give us the vigorous spirit as well as the humor of early America. When it's time for you to select your own tall tales, look in the card catalog under the last name of the character you want to read about. Or you may wish to look under the subject card, Folktale or Folklore, U.S. In the left-hand corner, you see the number 398. This is the nonfiction section where you will find the tall tale you want. Sometimes you may find an excellent anthology. An anthology is a collection of several stories. Yankee Doodle Cousins, illustrated by Robert McCloskey, is an excellent one. Kemp Morgan, who had a remarkable way of locating oil, is one of the many humorous stories in this book. Another outstanding book is John Henry by Ezra Jack Keats. Here, the illustrator's bold style helps us feel the strength of John Henry.